The moment she said those words, time seemed to freeze. I sat across from her at the restaurant table, my coffee untouched, watching her eyes fill with a familiar resignation. She'd been here before, that moment when a promising connection shatters against the reality of her life as a mother. What she didn't know was that I had my own secrets, my own reasons for hesitating that had nothing to do with her children. If you've ever had your past collide with your future in one heart-stopping moment, you'll want to stay until the end of this story. Like and subscribe if you've ever had to make a choice that would change everything in the blink of an eye. I met Eliza on a Tuesday. Not at a bar or through a dating app, but in the most mundane place possible, waiting in line at the pharmacy. She dropped her prescription, and I picked it up. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that rare spark people talk about but I'd never experienced. She had these incredible green eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled, and dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders. "Thanks," she said, tucking the prescription into her purse. "I'm usually more coordinated, I promise." "No problem," I replied, suddenly aware of how long it had been since I'd spoken to a woman who wasn't a coworker or barista. "Long day?" She laughed, and the sound made something in my chest loosen. "The longest." "I'm Eliza, by the way." "James," I said, extending my hand. Her grip was firm, confident. We chatted while waiting for our prescriptions. She was a graphic designer working from home. I told her about my job as an architectural engineer. The conversation flowed easily, without the awkward pauses that usually plagued my interactions with new people. When the pharmacist called her name, I surprised myself by asking for her number. Even more surprising, she gave it to me. I waited 3 days to text her, not wanting to seem too eager. We messaged back and forth for a week before I asked her to dinner. Nothing fancy, just a local bistro known for good food and a relaxed atmosphere. She suggested Friday at 7, and I agreed, spending the rest of the week alternating between excitement and anxiety. Friday arrived, and I found myself standing in front of my closet, overthinking every possible outfit combination. I settled on dark jeans and a blue button-down that my sister once told me brought out my eyes. I arrived 15 minutes early and waited outside, watching people pass by and trying to calm my nerves. Eliza arrived right on time, wearing a simple green dress that made her eyes look even more vibrant. She'd pulled her hair back, revealing delicate silver earrings that caught the light when she moved. "You look beautiful," I said, immediately feeling like a cliché. "Thank you," she replied, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The restaurant was busy but not crowded. Our table was in a corner by a window, offering a view of the street outside while still feeling private. We ordered drinks, red wine for her, craft beer for me, and fell into conversation as easily as we had at the pharmacy. She told me about growing up in a small town 3 hours away, about her dreams of starting her own design firm someday. I shared stories about my 3 siblings and our chaotic family gatherings, about the buildings I hope to design one day instead of just working on other people's visions. The food arrived, pasta for her, steak for me, and we continued talking through the meal. She had a way of listening that made me feel heard, really heard, in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. When she laughed at my jokes, it felt genuine, not polite. By the time we ordered coffee, I was already thinking about when I could see her again. The date was going perfectly, better than I had dared to hope. Then, as she stirred cream into her coffee, her expression changed. "James, there's something I should tell you," she said, her voice suddenly serious. My mind raced through possibilities. She was moving away. She had a boyfriend. She wasn't interested in seeing me again. "I have 2 kids," she said, her eyes meeting mine directly. "Twin boys. They're 6. I must have hesitated a moment too long, because her face fell slightly. She set down her spoon with a small clink against the saucer. "If you want to leave because I have 2 kids, I understand," she said quietly. "It's happened before. I'd rather know now than later. The resignation in her voice broke something inside me. How many times had she had this conversation? How many men had walked away at this revelation? I'm not leaving, I said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. I was just surprised. You didn't mention them before. She relaxed slightly, but wariness remained in her eyes. I've learned to be careful about when I share that information. Some men disappear as soon as they hear the word kids. Others stick around just long enough to meet them before deciding it's too much. Tell me about them, I said, genuinely wanting to know. Her face transformed as she spoke about her sons, Ethan and Noah. How Ethan was the serious one, always thinking, while Noah was all energy and laughter. How they were identical in appearance but completely different in personality. How they were the center of her world. Their father isn't in the picture, she said, answering my unasked question. He left when I was 7 months pregnant. Decided fatherhood wasn't for him after all. I felt a surge of anger toward this unknown man who had abandoned her when she needed him most. His loss, I said. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. It was hard at first, but we're doing okay now. My parents help when they can, and I've built a good life for us. But dating. She trailed off, shaking her head. Dating as a single mom is its own special challenge. I took a deep breath. If she was being honest, I needed to be too. I should tell you something as well, I said, my heart pounding. I was married before. Her eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't look upset. Divorced? Widowed, I said, the word still feeling strange on my tongue even after 3 years. Her name was Claire. Cancer. It was quick, diagnosed in late stages, gone 4 months later. James, I'm so sorry, she said, her hand turning to grasp mine. It's been 3 years, I said. I've dated a little, but nothing serious. Nothing that felt. I gestured between us. Nothing that felt like this. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing these new dimensions of each other. So, she finally said, a widow and a single mom. We're quite the pair, aren't we? I laughed, relieved by her lightness. Apparently so. Does it scare you? She asked. The idea of being involved with someone who has children? I considered the question carefully. I'd be lying if I said it didn't make me nervous. I've never been a father figure to anyone. But it doesn't scare me enough to walk away from whatever this is between us. She nodded, seeming to accept my answer. And what about you? Does it scare you to be with someone who's lost a spouse? A little, I admitted. I worry about being compared to her, about not measuring up. Claire will always be part of your story, Eliza said gently. Just like my boy's father, even in his absence, is part of mine. We all come with history. We finished our coffee and split a dessert, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. By the time I walked her to her car, the tension had dissolved, replaced by a new understanding between us. I'd like to see you again, I said as we stood beside her car. I'd like that too, she replied. But you should know, my time isn't always my own. The boys come first. I wouldn't expect anything else, I said. We can figure it out. She smiled, a real smile this time, and rose on her tiptoes to kiss my cheek. Good night, James. Good night, Eliza. I watched her drive away, my mind swirling with thoughts. I hadn't expected to find myself drawn to a woman with children. I hadn't expected to share Claire's story so early. I hadn't expected any of this. But as I walked to my own car, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Not just the fleeting kind that comes with a good first date, but something deeper. A sense that maybe, just maybe, life had more in store for me than I had dared to imagine. Our second date was at a park. Neutral territory, she called it. We walked along tree-lined paths, talking about everything and nothing. She told me more about her work, about the clients who drove her crazy and the projects that fulfilled her. I shared stories about my colleagues and the building we were currently designing. "When can I see some of your work?" she asked, genuinely interested. "Anytime," I replied. "Though I warn you, architectural drawings aren't exactly thrilling unless you know what you're looking at." "Try me," she challenged. "I might surprise you." She did surprise me, in many ways. She was stronger than she looked, carrying the weight of single parenthood with a grace that amazed me. She was funnier than I initially realized, with a dry wit that often caught me off guard. And she was cautious, not just with her heart, but with her boys' hearts too. "They've been through enough," she explained during our third date, a dinner at my apartment where I attempted to impress her with my limited cooking skills. "I can't bring someone into their lives who might disappear." "I understand," I said, and I did. "There's no rush." We dated for 2 months before she invited me to meet Ethan and Noah. Not as her boyfriend, but as her friend James, who would be joining them for a day at the Science Museum. I spent the night before researching dinosaurs and space facts, wanting desperately to connect with these two small humans who meant everything to her. The meeting went better than I expected. The boys were initially shy, hiding behind their mother and stealing glances at me. But by the time we reached the interactive exhibits, they were tugging at my hands, eager to show me their discoveries. "Mom says you build buildings," Ethan said as we watched a demonstration on structural engineering. "I helped design them," I corrected gently. "Other people actually build them. Could you design a house with a slide instead of stairs?" Noah asked, his eyes wide with possibility. "Technically, yes," I laughed. "Though most people prefer stairs for practical reasons." "Boring," Noah declared, making Eliza smile. By the end of the day, I had earned high fives from both boys and an invitation to watch their soccer game the following weekend. As I helped Eliza buckle them into their car seats, exhausted but happy, she gave me a look that made my heart skip. "You were great with them," she said as we stood by her car. "They're great kids," I replied honestly. "You've done an amazing job, Eliza." She kissed me then, a real kiss, not the careful ones we'd shared before. When she pulled away, her eyes were shining. "Thank you for today." "Anytime," I said, meaning it. The months that followed fell into a rhythm. Dinners at my place when the boys were with her parents. Family-friendly outings when they were with us. Late-night phone calls after the twins were asleep. Slowly, carefully, we built something together. There were challenges, of course. The first time Noah had a nightmare while I was staying over, I froze, unsure of my place. Eliza handled it seamlessly, comforting her son while giving me a reassuring smile over his head. The first time Ethan asked if I was going to be their new dad, Eliza and I exchanged panicked glances before she gently explained that we were still getting to know each other. And there were moments when Claire's absence hit me unexpectedly. When Eliza's laugh reminded me of hers. When I found myself comparing how they took their coffee or folded towels or 100 other insignificant details. Guilt would wash over me, followed by confusion. Was it possible to love again without betraying what came before? "It's okay to miss her," Eliza said one night as we lay in bed, her head on my chest. "I'm not threatened by your past, James. It made you who you are." Her understanding was a gift I hadn't known I needed. 6 months into our relationship, I was as much a part of their lives as they were of mine. I had a drawer at Eliza's house. The boys had claimed a shelf in my apartment for their toys. We were building something real, something lasting. Then came the job offer. A prestigious firm in Chicago wanted me to lead a major project, the kind of opportunity that comes once in a career. The catch? It would mean relocating for at least 2 years. I told Eliza immediately, watching her face carefully as I explained. "That's incredible," she said, her smile genuine but her eyes troubled. "You have to take it." I don't have to do anything, I replied. Not without discussing it with you first. We sat at her kitchen table after the boys were asleep, weighing options. She couldn't leave, her parents were here, the boys' school, her established freelance business. I couldn't pass up this opportunity without serious consideration. Long distance, she suggested, though neither of us looked enthusiastic. For 2 years? I shook my head. That's a long time. You could come back on weekends when possible, she said, but we both knew the reality of such an arrangement. Or you and the boys could come with me, I said quietly. She looked up, surprised. James, that's a huge step. I know, I admitted. But I love you, Eliza. And I love Ethan and Noah. The thought of being away from all of you for 2 years. I trailed off, unable to articulate the emptiness I felt at the prospect. We need time to think about this, she said, always the practical one. This isn't just about us. I agreed, and we tabled the discussion for the night. But as I drove home, my mind was racing. I had to make a decision within the week. The firm needed an answer. The next few days were tense. We talked in circles, both wanting to find a solution that wouldn't require sacrifice from either side. I researched schools in Chicago, neighborhood safety ratings, activities for the boys. She looked into remote work possibilities, spoke with her parents about extended visits. 3 days before my deadline, Eliza called me late at night. Can you come over? She asked, her voice tight. The boys are asleep. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. Those words never preceded good news. When I arrived, she was sitting on her front porch, wrapped in a cardigan despite the warm evening. I sat beside her on the swing, our shoulders touching but a distance between us that hadn't been there before. I can't ask them to leave everything they know, she said after a long silence. Their school, their friends, their grandparents. It's too much. I nodded, having expected this answer. I understand. And I can't ask you to give up this opportunity, she continued. It's what you've worked for all these years. So where does that leave us? I asked, though I already knew. She turned to face me, tears in her eyes. I think we need to be realistic, James. Long distance rarely works, especially with children involved. They need stability, consistency. Are you breaking up with me? The words felt hollow in my mouth. I'm being practical, she said, wiping at her eyes. I'm trying to make this easier for all of us. There's nothing easy about this, I said, anger flaring unexpectedly. You're giving up before we've even tried. I'm being realistic, she repeated. I've been through enough disappointment to recognize when something isn't going to work. We argued then, both hurt and frustrated. She accused me of not understanding the realities of parenthood. I accused her of using her children as a shield against taking risks. Words were said that couldn't be unsaid, wounds opened that wouldn't easily heal. I left her house that night convinced it was over. I called the firm the next morning and accepted the position. I began making arrangements for the move, throwing myself into preparations to avoid thinking about what I was leaving behind. 2 days later, I was boxing up books when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Ethan and Noah standing there, Eliza behind them looking nervous. We have something to say, Ethan announced, his small face serious. I knelt down to their level, confused but willing to listen. Mom told us you're moving to Chicago, Noah said, pronouncing the city carefully. That's right, I confirmed, glancing up at Eliza, who gave a small nod. And she said we can't go because of school and Grandma and Grandpa, Ethan continued. That's also right, I said, increasingly confused about why they were here. But we had a family meeting, Noah explained, and we voted. You voted? I repeated.